I'm Lance Webster, Director for District 52. This week we're going to talk about evaluations, the heart and soul of Toastmaster Club meetings. Speech evaluations. Why do we evaluate? We evaluate first of all because it helps the speaker learn and grow. It also helps those in the audience learn by watching the evaluations. And it helps those who are evaluating learn how to evaluate effectively, because the principles of an effective evaluation apply not just to speeches, but to how you work with your family, with employees, employers, all sorts of people. So when you learn how to evaluate powerfully, it's a great thing for you. Now, we use the sandwich method in Toastmasters. We always start with observing and noting and calling attention to the speaker's strengths, whatever they might be. And every speaker has got something that they did well, something that you like. You start with that. Then you give them a couple of tips on how they can be better next time. Not a lot. Don't rake them over the coals. Just give a couple of tips of things that they can be better with next time. And then close with something that praises them once again. That's very, very important. Now, what is it that we actually do when we are evaluating a speaker? There's several things to look for. Look for the physical, look for the structural, the organizational, and the introduction and the conclusion. Let me run through those very quickly. The physical is voice. Was the voice varied? Were pauses used effectively? Was the pitch varied? Rate. All of these things count. What about movement? Was movement on purpose and deliberate, or random and wandering back and forth? Gesture. Were gestures used to emphasize, to call attention to describe various reasons, or were there no gestures at all? Were hands just at the sides? How do you use the hands and the face and the expressions to call attention to and underscore what you're saying? Was the lectern used or not? We like speakers after 5 or 6, 7 speeches to be able to get away from the lectern. And what about notes? It's fine to use notes in the early speeches, but by speech 5, 6, 7, you should be getting away from notes, maybe down to note cards, and by speech 9 or 10, we hope that you'll be completely off your notes. Let's talk about speech structure for a moment. Every speech, I believe, and I've been teaching public speaking for many years, every speech should have one clear, simple, central idea. Everything in the speech should have a place under that central idea, like an umbrella, and then everything under the umbrella fits into that central idea. Should be very simple and memorable. Then you create main points. Each main point elucidates or expands on the central idea and is in itself a kind of a mini central idea. I suggest 3, 4, maybe at the most 5 main points for a 5 to 7 minute speech. 3 is probably plenty. Under each main point, you then have some support material, little stories, anecdotes, facts, figures, statistics, quotes, all kinds of things that can support your speech. So that's the main part of the speech, the central idea and the main points and their support material. Now, when we talk about content, there's a couple other things to remember. Is your speech on a topic that is of interest to the audience, or did you find a way to make it interesting to them? That's something you look for. Were the main points organized in some fashion, maybe chronological, maybe in terms of what happened over here, what happened over there? If you're baking a cake, you don't start with putting it in the oven. You start with deciding what kind of cake you want to have, and you go to the store and buy the ingredients and you mix them and all that stuff. And then you end up putting the cake in the oven and taking it out and putting the icing on. That's a sequential. So do you have a logical sequence that makes sense with what you're talking about? And is the evidence strong enough to support the assertions that you make or your main points? I want to talk for a moment about the introduction. Many people start their speech by saying, I know how I'll start my speech, and that's how they start. No, get the central idea and the main points down, and during that period of time, something will occur to you. There are 3 things an introduction to a speech has to do. First, it has to get people's attention. You can do that simply by clapping your hands, although that's silly after a while. But something that takes a few seconds and gets their attention. Maybe it's something that relates directly to a situation or a problem they have. Then you get them interested in it. Attention, interest, and then you tell them what you're going to tell them. And the way you do that is by telling them what the central idea is and what your main points are. Then you go into the body of the speech. Now let's talk about ending a speech. The ending, you look for, did the speaker summarize the main points and central idea? Did they reach a conclusion? This means that such and such. And finally, did they tie back to that thing at the beginning that they used to get attention and interest? Now, all of this is in the notes below. I'm happy to come to as many clubs as I can, and talk about this. I can actually work with your club to help every person in the room start work on creating their next speech using this technique. Be happy to do that. Just email me at DD, that's District Director, dd@district52.org. Or use the material below, and I'll look for you next week.